Let me tell you something about humanity. Something the rest of the galaxy spent 300 years trying to understand, and still could not fully comprehend. Humans are, by every measurable scientific standard, completely unremarkable. I say this without cruelty. I say this as Vorka, Senior Intelligence Analyst of the Dreyvun Collective, the species that mapped 47,000 star systems, cataloged over 9 million life forms, and once accidentally destroyed a moon while attempting to brew coffee. We understand unremarkable. We have studied unremarkable. Humans, however, are unremarkable with a deeply disturbing asterisk attached. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me begin at the moment when our Supreme Commander Drex, the most decorated military strategist in Dreyvun history, looked at a single, unarmed human aboard our flagship and said, with absolute confidence, "This will take 4 minutes." It took 11 hours, and that was only for the human to stop laughing. His name was Cade Orren. Cade Orren, to be precise. Captured on the fringe colony of Yulset 9 during a routine resource extraction operation. Our soldiers found him sitting on top of a disabled Dreyvun hover tank, eating something from a metallic pouch, completely unbothered by the 40 armed soldiers surrounding him. One of our field officers, a young Dreyvun named Skule, reported that when they raised their weapons, the human looked up, scanned the formation, and said, "Oh, cool. Are those the new Mark 7 pulse rifles? Nice. Those things actually work now." Skule submitted a report. The report was flagged. The report was delivered to my desk. And I, against every instinct developed during 30 years of intelligence work, wrote 2 words at the bottom of my analysis. Bring him. Commander Drex was not pleased. Drex was never pleased. Drex possessed the resting expression of someone who had just been informed that vacation was canceled, permanently, retroactively, and that the concept of vacation itself was being outlawed. But even Drex agreed that a human who responded to military capture by critiquing weapon design was worth studying. We brought Cade Orren aboard the flagship Vorth Prime, 7 kilometers in length. Crew complement, 40,000. Weapon systems capable of sterilizing a planetary surface in under 6 minutes. The pride of the Dreyvun Collective. We placed him inside the highest security containment chamber and activated every suppression field, neural dampener, and energy siphon available. Then PRYX, my research assistant, made the mistake of asking if he was afraid. Cade Orren looked at the humming suppression fields around him, then at the neural dampeners embedded in the walls, then at the towering silhouette of the warship visible through the reinforced viewport, and said, "Afraid of what, exactly? The ship? The guns? Or just the general vibe?" PRYX had no answer. PRYX was not accustomed to having no answer. PRYX once delivered a 6-hour lecture on binary star thermodynamics without pausing for breath, which was impressive considering we breathe through our backs. But PRYX stood before this human. This small, soft, biologically unenhanced creature sitting cross-legged inside a containment chamber. And he had nothing to say. I observed from the control deck above and wrote in my notes. Subject shows no threat response, no elevated cardiac indicators, no abnormal stress hormone activity beyond baseline. Either the neural dampeners are malfunctioning or this organism does not register existential danger the way other species do. I underlined the last sentence. Then I added a question mark. Then I added 3 more question marks. Because here is the thing the galaxy never truly understood about humans. It was not bravery. Bravery implies awareness of danger, followed by conscious choice. Cade Orren was not making a choice. Cade Orren was simply sitting there, eating from another metallic pouch he had apparently hidden on his person despite our full-spectrum bioscan. He described the contents as, and I am translating directly, slightly expired protein crackers, but honestly still fine. The Dreyvun Collective had conquered 11 civilizations by that point. None of them had eaten expired snacks inside our containment chamber. I looked at Drex through the observation glass. Drex looked at me, and in that moment, I believe both of us thought the same thing. We have made a terrible mistake. We had protocols for everything. I want to make this very clear before I continue, because it is important that you understand the level of preparation the Dreyvun Collective invested in every operation. We had protocols for hostile life forms. We had protocols for passive life forms. We had protocols for life forms that shifted between hostile and passive behavior, mostly a category created after dealing with the Vorka, who changed moods faster than a solar flare and were twice as destructive. We did not have a protocol for Cade Orren. This became a problem approximately 4 hours after his arrival. Our containment engineers discovered that the suppression fields were still active, yet Cade had somehow bypassed the secondary locking mechanism of his chamber door using nothing but a protein cracker wrapper, a loose wire from his boot lining, and what our engineers later described as an unreasonable amount of patience. He had not escaped. That was the disturbing part. The door was open. He was standing right at the threshold, and he was simply waiting, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed, until Skill arrived for a routine check, saw him standing there, and emitted a sound that our translation systems later classified as prolonged existential distress. Cade raised both hands and said, "Relax. I just wanted to see if I could do it. I wasn't going anywhere. Where would I even go? This ship is 7 kilometers long, and I don't know the layout." Skill filed another report. This one was significantly longer than the first. Commander Drex summoned an emergency meeting. All 40 senior officers of the Vorth Prime assembled in the central war chamber, staring at holographic footage of a human dismantling a Dreyvun suppression lock using trash. Nobody spoke for nearly 2 minutes. Then Drex said quietly, "What is he?" I answered carefully. "He is a baseline human, Commander. No augmentation. No genetic enhancement. No cybernetic integration. Standard biological profile. Average muscle density. Average skeletal structure. Average neural processing speed." Drex stared at the footage. "Then how?" "Well," I said slowly, choosing words like someone walking across thin ice in darkness. "The current working theory is that humans have a deeply unusual relationship with problems." "Explain." I displayed my analysis on the holographic screen. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward it. I clear my throat. In Dreyvun physiology, this involves briefly inflating the secondary neck chamber. Then I spoke. Most species, when facing an obstacle, calculate available resources and determine whether the obstacle is solvable within those parameters. If not, they stop. They seek assistance, wait for conditions to change, or accept the situation. This is rational. This is efficient. This is what every spacefaring civilization we have encountered does. Humans, however, I pause because the next part still confused me while speaking it, do not appear to possess a stopping threshold. They seem to treat impossibility as a starting suggestion rather than a final conclusion. Silence. Then PRYX spoke quietly from the back of the room. He has been inside that chamber for 4 hours. No tools, no assistance, and he treated it like a puzzle. For fun, the evidence suggests yes. The silence that followed was heavier. The kind of silence that appears when everyone in the room realizes they have made a significant collective miscalculation. Drex finally stood, walked to the holographic display, and observed the footage of Cade Orren standing relaxed in the open doorway, waiting to be found, wearing the expression of someone who had just solved a mildly interesting crossword puzzle on a slow afternoon. Drex turned to me and said, "I want him in this room, not as a prisoner, as a conversation." That request was unprecedented. Drex did not conduct conversations with captured species. Drex conducted interrogations, assessments, and, on one notable occasion, an extremely one-sided philosophical debate that ended with the other party reassigned to an ice mining station. But Drex wanted conversation, so we brought Cade Orren to the war chamber. He walked in, looked around at 40 Dreyvun officers silently watching him, looked at the holographic star maps covering every wall, looked at the weapon schematics displayed across the central table, then said, "Oh, nice setup. Very dramatic. You guys do the lighting on purpose, or is that just how it came?" Drex studied him for a long moment, then said, "Your civilization. How long have you been capable of space travel?" Cade sat down, uninvited in the chair, directly across from Drex. Depends on what you count. A few hundred years, give or take. And before that, mostly fighting each other, honestly. Your own kind. Yep. For how long? Cade thought for a moment. All recorded history, more or less. We only stopped when we had something bigger to worry about. Or when we got bored. One of those two. Drex looked at me. I looked at Drex. This was the most disturbing information we had received. Not the suppression bypass. Not the casual attitude. But the knowledge that humanity had spent millennia fighting itself, survived it, preserved every lesson, and then turned its attention to the stars. I wrote in my notes, the galaxy did not create a species optimized for comfort. It created 100,000 species optimized for stability. And then, accidentally, it created them. Drex leaned forward. Why are you not afraid of us? Cade Orren looked at the commander of the most powerful warship in the Dreyvun fleet. Shrugged slightly. Because being afraid of you doesn't help me. And I have better things to spend energy on. We released him 3 days later. Not out of mercy. Not out of diplomacy. But because 17 of our 40 senior officers had quietly begun visiting the containment level to speak with him. Skill had learned a human card game. PRYX had written 6 research volumes on human behavioral psychology and requested more time. Vorka, Senior Intelligence Analyst of the Dreyvun Collective, submitted my final report. I recommended humanity not be classified as a threat, not as a resource, not as a curiosity. I recommended humanity be classified as something we had never used in 30 years of cataloging civilizations. A warning, not to us, but to anyone else who looked at a small, soft, biologically average species on a medium-sized planet and thought, this will be easy, because I had seen Cade Orren dismantle a suppression lock using a protein cracker wrapper. And something told me, quietly, absolutely, that he was not even close to being the most capable of his species, and somewhere in the vast silence of the universe, humanity continued being quietly extraordinary.